Thank you. Thank you. Last part of the marathon. Henry Kissinger, just very briefly, is a man who's been a front man for this Illuminati for a long, long time, back into the 60s. He was a major manipulator. He was a neocon before they even termed the phrase neocons. And he also connects into people like Richard Pearl, James Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, who's on that defense policy board like Pearl and stuff. They all connect in together. But this is the ultimate neocon of the last 30, 40 years. That is, of course, a horrible picture, so let's change it. I don't know why I did that, but... yeah, it's horrible. They must be the nose pickers, because I found that as well. I was just... kind of strange people, aren't they? They're ruling us, you know. Why seek the star when you are the star? What I want to do in this last section, I'm going to go into real bizarre areas now, and anyone that thinks that I'm mad is going to have it fully confirmed in their belief system, because it's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, in this crazy world, if they don't consider you mad, then you have no confirmation of your own sanity, do you? Imagine if this crazy world thought you were sane. Oh my God, worst nightmare. And in this section, I want to talk about some of the aspects of this matrix, this mind prison that we actually live in, and how we create it, and how it's manipulated so that our reality becomes the reality the manipulators want us to have because it suits their agenda. And part of that is realizing that we are not physical bodies, whether they're black, white, or sky blue, pink. That's not what we are. That's a vehicle to experience this reality. We are consciousness, infinite consciousness that never dies. The word does not exist in consciousness. And therefore, if we consider ourselves to be physical people, there is no David Icke. David Icke is just the name for an experience infinite consciousness is having in this reality. That's all it is. It's just an experience. And if we start identifying with David Icke and Joe Bloggs, we get pulled into seeing ourselves as little insignificant people. Oh, I'm just Joe Public, I am, what can I do? And that's why we're constantly pushed into that disconnected state where we identify who we are with what we're doing. People, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Where people identify who they are with their job. They say, like, what are you? Oh, I'm a coal miner. I sweep the streets. I'm an airline pilot. I actually am in the City of London. And then we kind of judge who they are, and they judge who they are by what they're doing. It's just an experience. That's all it is. I mean, how many people go up to someone and they say, hey, hello, nice to meet you. Who are you? And you say, I'm everything that exists. Nice to meet you. We don't do that. And in a sane and enlightened world, the other guy would say, hey, yes, so am I. Thought I recognized you. The divisions are there to divide us. So I want to go into all that and many other things, and many other bizarre things. Interesting thing, the question that I started to ask is, because I realized after a few years of this, that there was some other dimensional connection here. not just talking to people on the inside, but many other different people, people who had been involved in the mind control projects and saw some of this stuff from the inside. So my question was, who controls the controllers? Because it's a real hierarchical thing, and eventually it goes out of this dimension. And the thing to remember is that we don't live in a world. This is the kind of information I'm talking about in this last section, which has been fundamental to the manipulation of the human race, the suppression of it, because it is the means by which we understand who we are, how we create the reality we like or don't like, and how we can change it to another one. Holds us in the matrix. When we look through our eyes, we don't see a world we think we do. All we're seeing is a frequency range that our five senses can access. And it's a very, very narrow one. Outside of that frequency range that we can access is infinity, an infinity of possibility and experience and places of existence. And we're just seeing a fraction. Basically, it's like having a radio and you tune it to radio 1. And what you get then is radio 1. You don't get radio 2, 3, and 4. And yet all those radio stations, broadcast frequencies, are existing in the same space, just as all existence and all these other dimensions of existence exist in the same space that we're occupying. But the radio is tuned to radio 1, so that's what you get. You move it to radio 2, now you've got radio 2. Radio 1 hasn't stopped broadcasting because you've moved from it, it's just that you're not accessing it anymore. And it's the same with our experience in this illusion we call the physical world. When we take on physical form, we are locking ourselves into this reality. Therefore, that's what we experience, this frequency range. You get cats and other animals who have a greater visual frequency range, and what they do is they're reacting to empty space in the room, and you're going, what's wrong with the bloody cat? It's going like that. But to the cat, greater visual access of frequency range, that is not empty space, although it appears to be to us. People talk about the UFOs. I saw this UFO and it disappeared in front of my eyes. Like, what are you on? You're mad. No, it hasn't actually disappeared. It has left the frequency range of the five senses, therefore it appears to disappear. That is all. It's all about frequency and whether you're tuned to it. And I started to realize, in fact, as more and more is being identified, only 1% or less than 1% of identifiable mass matter in this universe we can actually see with our five senses. And yet we are so locked into the conditioning, this is reality, that when you're talking about anything that is beyond what is accepted to exist, you're mad, you're on something. And yet, hold on a minute, we can't see 99% of what is known to exist. What? We open our minds to all possibility. It's like Socrates, the Greek philosopher, said, wisdom is knowing how little we know. That holds your mind open. Not that you accept anything, any old crap, but it holds your mind open to possibility instead of dismissing things just because they're different. Bloody hell, I'm going to get into some different things in this section. Let's start. One of the things that's been kind of thrown at me, dismiss him, he says reptiles run the world, you're mad. Well, I have a simple philosophy. I follow information. If you try to uncover what's going on in the world with a belief system, whether it's a religious belief system or whether it's a rigid one, or whether it's a political belief system or whatever, anything like that, then you might as well just go and have a cup of tea. Because what's going on in the world is so different to what we think is going on that if you have a belief system to defend, and also if you have an ego to defend, hey, what will people think of me, then you're dead in the water, because you will not go into areas that this information takes you, because your belief system will edit them out. Not go in there, my belief system's under pressure if I do. I just follow information. And I got to the point in about the mid-late 90s, when I'm working on how the five sense world, you might say, is manipulated, and the structures and all this stuff, where I started running into a very strange theme. And that is of people who, of all walks of life, I mean, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of these people all around the world now, who told me how they saw a person, often in positions of power, but not always, turn into a reptilian type form in front of their eyes and then move back again. What's become known throughout history as shape-shifting and all that stuff. Morphing is the modern word for it, apparently, that people are using. And it's like when you first hear someone say that, you're going, what? And then another one tells you, and it's like, what, but not quite so pronounced. And when this theme comes, there was one period in America in about 1997 when I met 12 different people in different parts of America. I was traveling a lot in 15 days who told me the same basic story. And I talked then to people in some of the mind control projects, not looking for these stories, but I just walked into them. And this book, Transformation of America, is written by a mind-controlled slave of the CIA from when she was a kid in the 50s right the way through to the late 1980s, called Kathy O'Brien. And when I'm starting to get this reptilian thing, I'm thinking, I'm sure she talks about reptilians in her book. So I went back to the book, flicking through, feeling a right prat, looking under the index for reptilian, and I found about 3 or 4 references. And what she says was, and this is a book that names Cheney and Father George Bush and a stream of people in America as child abusers and what have you, and she sent copies to members of Congress, to all the media back in the early 90s when it came out. No reaction, nothing from any of the people. Just go away. Don't want to go there, because if we go to court, then the whole thing will come out. Don't want to go there. Shut up, ignore it. Anyway, I'm looking through this, and she was talking, and understandably, what she did when she had these experiences was she explained them away as part of the mind program. They're just trying to manipulate my mind and confuse me. But what she said was, she met one of the people that she was a slave to was Father George Bush during the Reagan administration. And she said that he told her they were a, quote, extraterrestrial race that from another plane of existence that had taken the world over, and no one noticed because they looked human. And she said that Bush turned in front of her eyes into a reptilian type form, just this part of him, and then went back again. And she thought it's just part of the confusion. And then she tells in the book as well as how she went to Mexico, where she was put under the authority for a while of Miguel de la Madrid, who was president of Mexico. And she says in the book how he told her the story of what he called the iguana race. And he said what happened is that they were a non-human reptilian race, humanoid race, that came to this planet and interbred with humans in the far ancient world to create hybrid bloodlines through which they could manipulate the world. And he said, quoting her, perfect for world leaders. And she said that he told her that these particular hybrid bloodlines could take either human or reptilian form and move between the two. He also, she said, changed into a reptilian form in front of her eyes. Now what she was saying that was just, it's not real, it's just a mind control project, is exactly what these people all over the world from all these different walks of life, I mean people in the banking system and power dressing business women and stuff like that, have had this experience. Talking of that, I had to bloody laugh really, but I met this lady in Canada who said to me, she ran a company in Vancouver, and she came to one of my talks and said, I've got to meet you because I know it's, you know, people laugh at you, but I know it's what you're saying is true. And she told me the story of how she had this experience with this guy. She said he had a real dark side, which he said he was trying to work with and understood was there. She said, and they came back in the late 90s to a house, and they went into a bedroom to have sex, right? And just above her bed, she says, is the biggest secret, which is the first time that I started writing about this stuff. And she said this guy took an immediate aversion to this book and started saying, that's some bloody nonsense, what are you having that for? Rubbish, do you want to read that crap? That sort of stuff. She's thinking, hold on, it's just a book. So anyway, they start having sex, and she said he started getting really, really rough. And she said, I had my hand on his back, and I looked up at him. She said, and this guy started transforming into a reptilian form. Now, what made me bloody laugh, because it's so sodding bizarre, is she said, I then felt my hand going back. And she said, I looked round, and he was sprouting a sodding tail, right? She said, I threw him off and screamed, and he morphed back to human form. I threw him out the house, never seen him again. Now, bizarre as that may sound, and my God, it is from this reality that we have, I've heard these stories in other countries where people have talked about the same basic experience. And how amazing. We have a tremendous reptilian genetics anyway, because there are still people around the world with tails. I mean, you can feel here where the tail used to be, going way back. And in Western medicine, they call them caudal appendages. And they whip them off at birth, and that's it. But in other parts of the world where they don't have those facilities, there's still people with tails. They come to light from time to time in the press, because it's just that a DNA code that should be closed at this point opens for some reason in those people, and it manifests a physical trait. So more and more of these stories started coming, and I'm thinking, shit, what's going on here? And then I come back to England, and I meet a lady who tells me that she is a friend of a close associate of Princess Diana. And I haven't gone public by the time I've met her with this stuff, not written any books on it. I'm just trying to work out what the hell is happening. And I met her. This was a lady who was a close confidant of Princess Diana for 9 years and was acknowledged as such in the tabloid media. A lady called Christine Fitzgerald. And she came over to talk to me about what I thought the Windsors and the way they treated Diana, which was appalling. And we're in this conversation, and I'm listening, and she said, by the way, do you know what Diana used to call the Windsors? And I said, no. She said she used to call them the reptiles and the lizards, and she used to say that they weren't human. And I'm thinking, shit, not more frickin' reptiles. I mean, I'm thinking, shit, I'm going to have to talk about this if this goes on, and my God, hey, it's going to be a laugh, isn't it? And I said, what? I said, what do you mean, reptiles? I'm like playing the idiot, because she didn't know that this had come into my research. And she said, yeah, you know that the Windsors are a human-reptilian hybrid bloodline. And this is what the aristocracy and the royal families are. That's why they, right back into the ancient world, they said they had the right to rule because of their bloodline, because of their DNA, because of their genetic connection to what were perceived as the gods. So what I did, I started looking back in all these bloody ancient texts and stuff, and I started finding in the ancient accounts references, many of them, to shape-shifting reptilian human entities that could move between a reptilian and human form. Back in Asia, they had a group of people they called the Nagas that could do that. And then I went in to talk to my great friend Kreda Mutwa, the shaman down in South Africa, and he started telling me all about this whole thing from their perspective, what he's been initiated into. Not only have people reported in large numbers to me seeing this process of this morphing from a human to a reptilian form and then back again, they've also seen like ethereal reptilian forms following people around and locking into these lower chakra points, these vortex points that connect the different levels of us with the physical. So I go and see Kreda Mutwa. He's on the left, by the way. And this man is an absolute freaking genius. I mean, he is a library on legs, this man. What happened is, I went to talk in South Africa just after The Biggest Secret came out, and he contacted me through a third party and wanted to speak to me. So I went to see him, and I spent hours and hours, days in fact, with him. And what he said, he asked me first of all, is how do you know about the Chitahuri? I said, well, I just come into my life, and people have told me these stories. He said, what's in your book, I was initiated into kind of 40, 50 years ago. The true history of Black Africa and the true history of the world. He said, we call your reptilians the Chitahuri, which translates as the children of the serpent or the children of the python. He said, they are the ones that run the world. But people don't realize it because they look human. And again, you find this recurring theme, bizarre as it is, on the face of it. What was this bloody paper? Some paper was trying to take the piss out of me, and put this on the front page, and that's quite good actually, because it gives me a nice little image. And of course, it's not like physical. It's this reptilian race appear to operate, from what I can gather, just outside the frequency range of the five senses. And sometimes people can extend their visual frequency range into that range of these entities and see them, sometimes briefly, and other times they move their frequency into ours and you can see them briefly and then they've gone. So the more that I've understood, interestingly, that's what they gave British troops to train with before they went out to Iraq. I thought that was quite bizarre, really. So the question I started to ask, and the question I started to ask, and what lots of people have asked, understandably, it's very, very relevant, is this: if this manipulation has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, why would people all that time ago give their lives to advancing this agenda if they weren't going to be around when it all transpired, where it was all heading, which is the centralized control of the planet? Well, how about if there are entities which don't always take a reptilian form, but it's a massively common theme, that actually operate on levels of frequency just outside this one, which have a different relationship to time that we have, and they come in and out of our timeline through this period of time, just occupying certain human physical bodies to manipulate this dimension from just outside of its frequency range. And what if certain bloodlines had a DNA resonance which made that easier than the general run of the population? And so if you could manipulate these particular bloodlines into positions of power, what you're actually doing is putting the vehicle for these entities into the positions of power. Talking to insiders of this, particularly in America, looking at some of the ancient accounts, talking to people like Credo Mutwa, talking to the people who have experienced this, this seems to be basically what's going on. And because when we look at these people, what do we look at them with? We look at them with the five senses. Therefore, what we see is their five-sense human level. Hey, they're human, don't be stupid. But what's just beyond that? Controlling and animating the emotional and mental processes of these particular people. One of the things that I've found studying this over the years is that this idea of the eyes are the window on the soul is very, very true. And one of the things that I've found is that those that are possessed, that's the word I guess would use, by these entities, they have an emotionless look in the eye, in the sense that no matter what their face is doing, it might be smiling widely and all this stuff, the eyes never change. There's always this cold stare no matter what this is doing. And again, this is repeated to me by people who've experienced them. So this was painted by Credo Mutwa from ancient and modern accounts of this Chittahuri, and there seems to be many kind of different species of them, but the eyes, the piercing eyes, the evil eye maybe that came from, is a common theme. So what is actually behind some of these people? That's the question. Because you know, whatever, there is something that connects these people so fundamentally to this agenda, and they are all people who do not have the ability to empathize with the victims of their actions. See, we have an emotional fail-safe mechanism whereby we feel empathy with people. Therefore, the thought of cluster bombing a child, we simply could not go there. What? The empathy stops us. If you don't have that empathy, there is no fail-safe mechanism. Anything goes. And with the people running this show, anything goes. And what I'm told, I'm just a kind of journalist really passing this on. There's so many questions I've got to ask about this, is that there is it's described to me by insiders as a corruption of the DNA, but what it is, it's just a different trait. And it can be very, very subtle, because the difference in DNA between a house mouse and a human ain't that great compared with the amazing difference in physical traits and characteristics. There is something in the DNA, they say, that makes this possession easier, and that's why they want to hold the DNA corruption by constantly interbreeding with each other, because once you start breeding outside of it, it starts to dilute very quickly and become inoperative. Now, I didn't know till I started looking at this that actually the most ancient part of the human brain is known by scientists as the R complex, the reptilian brain. I never knew that. Because of our reptilian history. We have tremendous reptilian genetics going way back. And what scientists say, I'm talking mainstream ones here, is the characteristics we get from that reptilian part of the brain, which we all have, is a obsession with ritual. Not just sacrificial ritual, but ritualistic behavior, going to the same supermarket at the same time every week, circular repeating behavior over and over again. They say that we get a cold-bloodedness from the reptilian brain, where we do things without any care of the consequences for those that suffer from our actions. That we get a desire for hierarchical, top-down power over structures of control from the reptilian brain. And many other of these traits, which, whether people accept the reptilian thing, and it don't matter to me, are the traits of the Illuminati. Now, in other people, they are balanced out by other parts of the being. But if you are really into the control by the reptilian brain, you are far more likely to express these traits of the reptilian brain more than the general population. What happened as this research went along is that I came across this lady, Giuliana Conforto, who's trained as a physicist, and she contacted me. She's an Italian. She wrote this brilliant book, Man's Cosmic Game, which takes the so-called paranormal and explains it in very simple scientific terms. And she contacted me, and she said, do you know that between dimensions there is like a neutral zone, which she called the interspace plane. It doesn't have an energy source like a dimension. It's almost like a little crevice between it, a neutral zone between one and the other. She said, I think that's where your reptilians are, in that neutral zone, because it's a place, right the way through history, going way back, there is this folklore recurring of entities that manipulate human life from these other planes of existence. So I called Credo Mutwa and I said, look, this lady's been on telling me that there are these interspace planes between dimensions, and she says she thinks that that's where these entities could be. I said to him, does this exist in your culture? Oh yes, he said. In our culture we call them the heaven between heavens. And he said that's where the reptilians are, in this little crevice between dimensions, and they manipulate this world by working through physical bodies in this so-called physical five-sense world. And this is just a thing I picked up off the internet, just to kind of symbolize, it's very well symbolized with the Freemasonic floor, this interspace plane between dimensions. And what she said was that the Giovanni Conforto, that they don't have an energy source like a dimension, so they need to create one. And so it's not only that behind the scenes that the world is manipulated by one force working through two, it's actually even outside of this dimension of existence, this manipulation goes on. And there's a reason they're looking for. So what seems to be the situation, and take it or leave it, it's just information, bizarre as it looks, is that in this interspace plane are these entities, not just reptilian but other kind of entities that manipulate into this dimension through possession, which of course is a theme of history. And they possess certain bloodlines. Now, those Illuminati bloodlines that I've been talking about coming out of the Near and Middle East, they're not the only ones. They exist in China and all over the world. The ancient emperors of China claimed the right to be emperor because of their genetic connection to the serpent gods. Again, the same recurring theme going way back. And so what you have is people put into positions of power, these bloodlines with this DNA corruption, and they are actually possessed and their mental and emotional processes controlled, not much emotionally, by these interspace entities. And so what happens is, on top of these pyramids of power in these various countries, you have basically the same entities manipulating events. And, you know, these buggers don't go to war, do they? They play off the people against each other. And so often, these conflicts here are just for the movie. They're not in conflict at all. They are answering to the same agenda. And so you have the people played off against each other in war, and they're orchestrating it. You know, I have a simple way of stopping all war. All you have to do is make it a law that anyone that declares war has to fight on the front line from day one. Finish. Over. I mean, if George W. Bush was on the front line in Iraq when the first bullet was fired, he'd be under a bed in Houston when the second bugger went off, wouldn't he? No, playing their game. And it's interesting, the Disney organization, a lot of this stuff is put out in really kind of different ways through the media and various things. And I watched this Disney film, Monsters, Inc., with my son, and I went along, just a kind of children's thing, and I sat there and watched it, and I started getting closer and closer to the edge of my seat. If you haven't seen Monsters, Inc., again with the Illuminati Disney Corporation, the story is this: there are these monsters in this monster world, but they don't have an energy source. So what they have to do is get the energy source from the human world. So in the power station in the monster world, all these doors are brought down and put in front of them, symbolic, I would suggest, of these interdimensional gateways, which you can move between dimensions if you know what you're doing. And these monsters then all line up and they walk through these doors. And as they walk through the door, they walk into a child's bedroom. And their job is to make the child terrified, and as the child screams, they catch the scream, the fear energy, in this tube, and they go back to the monster world and plug it into the power station, and it powers the monster world. Well, from what I understand, that's pretty much what goes on in this sense. Incidentally, who's the hero? The all-seeing eye. I love it. And in The Matrix, the first Matrix movie, and this is a theme that I've been picking up, why do they do this? Why do they manipulate humanity? What's it about? And in the movie, the first movie, The Matrix, of course, one of the themes major themes, was that the controlling force manipulating the Matrix was using the energy of human beings as its power source. Again, this recurring theme, which has come up in my research again and again. The Morpheus character says they have turned the human being into one of these. Now, what I understand is the power source in this interspace plane, this heaven between heavens, that empowers them is human fear. That's what it is. And so they manipulate through these bloodlines war, horror, famine, all the things that generate enormous amounts of fear. That's what the whole game is, turning the human race into a power station, generating fear energy which can be absorbed and used to empower them. Otherwise, they can't operate where they are. So these guys manipulate the wars and the horrors and the suffering and therefore the fear and the stress and all the rest of it. And they turn the people basically into batteries or generators, generating the fear that empowers the manipulators just beyond the 5 sense level of human existence. And to hold us in this reality, this conditioned reality, to keep us from understanding the game, they have created what has become known as the Matrix. It is an illusory world that we are manipulated to believe is real, but is actually not. It's simply an illusion of our minds. And what more and more people are going through, and that's what happened to me in 1990, 91, when I was kind of all over the bloody Wogan show and stuff. Symbolically in the Matrix movie, there were 3 stages with the Neo character. And interestingly, if you play with the words Neo, it becomes the oneness. Once you become the oneness, you start to see things that you can't when you're in disconnected illusion. First is to explain that you're a slave. You're a slave, Neo. You were born into bondage. And that which controls you, the Matrix, is all around you. What you see, touch, and taste when you pay your taxes, when you do this, when you do that. It's all the Matrix. Then there is the decision to, hey, I want to be free of this. Something I decided back in the late 80s, early 90s, and then you go through the process of transformation. And I know from experience, and it was more extreme with me, it can be amazingly painful and can blow your life apart. But once the debris settles, your life is far better than it was before. It's like the veil lifts. It's like sitting in a room with no windows all your life, and people are telling you this is what it is, this is life, this is reality. And then someone whips the roof off and you look up. Whoa! And something like this goes on. Ah! They're lying to us. Oh my God! Because you can start to see things you couldn't see before. And when all that amazing stuff was happening to me in the early 90s, oh, it's mad, thinks he's Jesus, and all that stuff, what was happening was this veil was lifting. And in that period, if you'd have asked me what planet I was on, I'd have had to kind of check, because I was moving from one state of being to another. And when everything settled down, it took about 3 months. I'm looking through the same eyes, hearing through the same ears, and I'm hearing and seeing a completely different world, seeing things I could never see before. And more and more people are going through this, not in public, but in private, all over the world, as the veil's lifting. And in different ways, it's lifting at different speeds, but people are beginning to see as the veil lifts. Now, the next the kind of stage, or the latest stage that's kind of hit me, was not just realizing intellectually that it's an illusion, but actually kind of understanding how the illusion's created, and therefore how we can create another one. And it all started for me in January of this year. And this I'm going to lead into how therefore we're manipulated, because if you have the knowledge I'm going to go into and the people don't, well, you can play them like a violin. I realized over the last year or so that if I was going to move this on and understand more than I had at that point, it wasn't that I just had to talk about other dimensions. I wanted to go in awareness and experience them. So in this period, I get this invitation to go to Brazil, to the Amazonian rainforest, and partake in this tea called ayahuasca. And it's been used by shamans in South America for centuries to take people into other states of awareness. Now, I got to 50 years of age, never touched any of this stuff, but I thought, I want to see what's beyond this veil. So I went down and I took it a couple of times. And I had the most amazing experience, particularly the second time, when I went into another state of consciousness where everything was still and I was everything that existed. I was still self-aware, but I was everything. There was no division between me and everything else. It was an unbelievable, blissful state of oneness with all. And it didn't vibrate, it was still. And as I went into this state, this voice started to talk to me, and it's just decoding thought forms. And it was as clear as I'm talking through this microphone, a female voice. And for about 4 or 5 hours in this altered state, it started giving me the deal of the matrix and what it was. And it was incredibly profound, and I'm putting this together in a book I'm just finishing now, doing all of it. But in brief, it said that this matrix, this world we think is real, is merely an illusion generated by our own minds and doesn't actually exist. It is a holographic illusion. And by manipulating our sense of reality, conditioning our sense of reality, that belief in what is real, manifests itself as a three-dimensional holographic illusion. And that if we start to realize that we are creating that reality we don't like, we can take control of our consciousness back from the conditioning, decondition from the reality we're conditioned to believe in, and create a completely different illusion. It'll still be an illusion, but it will be a nicer illusion. And what was pounding around my head several times, right at the start, and then it was repeated, and then later, were these words: remember this, infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. In other words, the oneness. In other words, the oneness of everything is the only truth. Everything on top of that are the illusions that one consciousness creates for itself. Infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. So, armed with this, and that's the other thing it talked about again and again, oneness. Associate with being one, not apart. You know, when you hold a droplet of water, seawater in your hand, it seems to be a droplet because it's disconnected from its ocean of infinity. But you drop that droplet back in the ocean, and where's the droplet and where's the ocean? The droplet is now the ocean. And what I was told in this experience is what the manipulators have done is give us the illusion of division from being oneness, identify with being Bill Jones or Mary Smith, and because we accept the reality of division, we create the illusion of division. We are still one, but we now have the illusion of not being, and so that becomes our experience. And there's another interesting thing, what it said was, that's basically the matrix. Divided in our minds from oneness, but not in reality, only in our minds. And what it said was, interesting, if it vibrates, it's illusion. And where I was did not vibrate, because it said this: the vibrational frequencies, dimensions and stuff, that we go to, most people, after we leave this dimension, we move off it, so-called death, not that it exists, we transform to another level of existence without this form. That is also the matrix, because it still vibrates. It might be a more enlightened level of the matrix, less dense than this one, but it's still the matrix. And reincarnation, it said, is merely consciousness in a disconnected state moving from different levels of the matrix and back into this one. Because it said the whole idea of the matrix is division and duality, dividing oneness into constituent parts, which it can then play off against each other, left and right, negative and positive. And oneness is oneness. There's not two, there's one. Therefore, it has nothing, because what is a vibration? It's 2 points, an oscillation between 2 points. So what it said was, oneness is oneness. There is no other point. How can it oscillate? It must be still. It just is. The matrix is frequency, is vibration, and if it vibrates, it's still illusion. And another thing it said was basically what this level of the matrix is, this 5-sense level, is a time loop. It's the illusion of passing from past to future when there is no time. And because oneness, and I experienced this when I was in that state, there was no time. Everything just was in that moment. And so to keep us disconnected from oneness, the matrix has created the illusion of time, moving from past through present to future. And if you are connected to the illusion and think it's real of time, you cannot be fully connected consciously to oneness where there is no time. So the physical form is programmed to go through a period of aging, which fundamentally confirms, yes, time exists. Night and day and all this stuff. And when you get people who go into these other states, no matter who they are and how they do it, the common theme is, I was everything. I was at one with everything, and there was no time. The time is an illusion, and they manipulate time. We are not this physical form. This is a vehicle to experience this world, and this actually doesn't exist, as I'll get to in a second. It's a holographic illusion also. And if it's a holographic illusion, how can it age? Because we believe it can, therefore we program it to do so. We are consciousness, connected to all other consciousness, which kind of, when you think about it, if we stood in front of a mirror and smacked ourselves with a baseball bat, we'd say, hey, call the guys in the white coat, what are you doing? Because we've lost the understanding that we are all one consciousness, we have Arab suicide bombers killing Jewish people, a Jewish army killing Arab people, and they're killing their freaking self, if you understand the level of oneness. It's the disconnection, the identification with division that allows these things to happen. The matrix to work has to give the illusion of division. And if we knew we were all one, would we do the things to each other we do? Of course we wouldn't. And so we have to be manipulated to believe that. So, we are actually consciousness, and we're not the physical body at all. We are energy, consciousness, infinite consciousness. We are not what we are told we are, which is a physical form. Identify with your body. It's too thin, it's too fat. You're the wrong sex, you're the wrong gula. Bloody nonsense. We get sold and we believe. There's not black oneness and Jewish oneness and white Aryan soddy oneness. There is oneness, that's all there is. We are each other. So, this is the reason they want to keep us, as I started off the day, in this disconnected state in the eggshell, because then once we stop connecting with that and becoming vehicles of oneness to experience this world, we disconnect in our minds from that knowledge, wisdom, perception, intuitive knowing, and therefore at that point we have one point at which to get access on what's going on in the world and who we are, and that's this. So if you can manipulate reality to disconnect people because they don't think they're oneness, they think they're Fred Bloggs, you disconnect them from that level of their infinite knowing, and you also control what's coming in here, so you program the droplet with your reality. And that's why right the way through the ages, people who have talked about this have been ridiculed, called dangerous, burnt at the sodding stake. It's the most dangerous information to the whole existence of this manipulation. What is reality? Answer, whatever we think it is. What I did, by the way, that's a brain, George, okay? You know the one you didn't have? You know, that's a brain. What I did when I came back from Brazil, and there was a ton of stuff that I was told about this, I thought, okay, I'm going to check this bloody thing out. So I started looking at the experiments in quantum physics and all this stuff to see if this whole kind of illusion idea that I was told actually stood up in this reality. And I realized some amazing things. Do you know when we say, I saw it with my own eyes? No, you did not. We don't see with our eyes. I didn't know that. We see with the visual cortex in the brain. And experiments have shown with people that we edit up to and sometimes more than 50% of the detail that comes out in through the eyes, as it passes through the different levels of the brain, like the temporal lobes and stuff, we put in and take out detail on the basis of what we believe we should be seeing. And funnily enough, right at the start of this reptilian thing, when I met Credo Mushra, I said, what if these people exist? Why don't we see them, more of them? And he said, because the brain, this is a kind of primitive shaman in Africa. Genius, the man is. He said, because the brain edits out what people don't expect to see or don't want to see. They edit out and they don't actually register it. And this is what these experiments are finding. So, again, even on this level, if you can program the belief of someone, what they believe to be real, they'll bloody edit and create what you condition them to believe. And that's why when we start to open up and disconnect from the programming, go into a process of unlearning what we've been told, we then start to see things we haven't seen before, because we're no longer being dictated to by the programming on the basis of what we should see. This is the real bottom line of the manipulation. I mean, I saw this proverb, where there is love, there is pain. Bollocks. No pain, no gain. Illusion! We only feel pain in the brain when we bash our foot. We don't feel it in the toe, we feel it in the brain. That's where it registers. Everything comes up to here. We don't have to have pain. We just think we do. So we do. And now this is just a few shots of the world we live in. I mean, it looks pretty solid, doesn't it? I mean, you know, you got to go to that wall and bang my head on it. It'll hurt, because that's my reality still. Even though I know it's a nonsense, you can still get it's a real challenge to disconnect from it on that level, but people do. But actually, the world cannot be solid. It can't be. It seems to be. It can't be. Impossible. What do scientists say the physical world is made of? It's made of atoms, mate. Everyone knows that. Oh, have you seen the inside of an atom? It's friggin' empty. As one physicist said, I saw in a book, if you symbolize an atom to be the size of a cathedral, things like the particles within it will be about the size of a 10-cent piece. The rest of it is what, to our reality, though nothing is, empty space. How the bloody hell can a solid physical world be solid if it's made up of atoms that are as least solid as you could possibly imagine? Only because of the illusion we're creating in the holographic world we are manipulated to believe in. There's this book, and there's a number like it now, fascinating stuff. I started really reading this after I came back from Brazil, and many books like it. Amazing what's out there that people don't mostly see. The Holographic Universe by Michael Tolbert. And he's detailing how, as I was told in Brazil, in great detail also, how this world is simply an illusional, holographic world of illusion. And he tells a story in there which he experienced himself, and this is very, very indicative of just what an illusion we live in. He said that there was a party his father called at his house, and he brought this hypnotist because, you know, a stage hypnotist even can manipulate the mind to believe it's seeing a bloody giraffe when there's no bloody giraffe there, but it sees it, he believes it. What do you mean there's no giraffe? I can see it. No, it's been programmed into you, and therefore you see it. And this is what the Illuminati are doing all the time, program us to see what they want us to see. So what happened was that as this guy was coming out in this party, but with this hypnotist out of an hypnotic state, the hypnotist said to him, when you come out of this hypnotic state, you are not going to be able to see your daughter. Okay, so he comes out, oh, hello. And what the hypnotist had done before he brought him out, he was sitting there looking this way, he'd put his daughter there. This guy's looking around, and people were saying, can you see your daughter? He couldn't see his daughter. More than that, what the hypnotist did was went behind his daughter and pushed something against her lower back and said to the guy on the other side of her, "Can you tell me what's in my hand?" And the guy said, "It's a watch." And he said, "Can you read the inscription on it?" And he could. His daughter's standing here. But his mind had been conditioned, hypnotized, and mass hypnotism is what we're talking about here in terms of this matrix and this insane world. They had been hypnotized to believe he wouldn't see his daughter. Therefore, he didn't register. This is happening all the time. And when you talk about the body being illusion, there was this story, he tells that in this book, but I've seen it in other books too, of this guy. His name was Wright, and he had this very, very fast-acting cancer. And he was in hospital, and he was given a very few days to live. And he'd found this drug which was having trials, which was supposed to be a wonder drug. You know, they bring them on every now and again. This is a wonder drug, pushes the share price up. That's all they do it for. And he'd asked and begged the doctor to give him this wonder drug. So the doctor thought, well, it's a waste of bloody time, mate. And he resisted for a long time, but eventually he got this drug for him. And he gave it him on the Friday, and the doctor then went away for the weekend, expecting to come back on the Monday to find this guy out of it. Snuffed it. He comes back. This guy's got cancers the size of tennis balls all over him. He comes back. The guy's out of bed for the first time in weeks. They start doing tests on him. The cancer has reduced dramatically. Within a short time, there was no cancer. Wonder drug. He goes away. Fine for 2 months, this chap. He then reads that trials for this wonder drug are not going well. His cancer comes back. By this time, the doctor had started to suss what it was. His mind was doing it. Because his belief, that word keeps coming back, in the drug was making his body well. It's an illusion. Therefore, we can do anything we want with it if we know and access that power. So he comes in. The doctor started to suss this. So he says to him, "Look, no. He said, you know that where they said it wasn't going well, that was a faulty batch. What I'm giving you is the real deal, okay?" And what he did then, and this works when you look at placebo experiments where they give people something that is not a drug and to see if the drug's working. Placebos tend to work better if you use a hypodermic needle as opposed to putting them in the mouth, because it just changes the level of belief in the fact that they're going to work. So he gives the guy the drug again. The cancer goes. He goes away now for months. Fine, no problem, this guy. And then he reads that the American Medical Association have ended the trials of this drug because it's turned out to be ineffective, and there's no way back now from his mind. The guy was dead in a short time of cancer. This is the power of the mind. Now, these guys understand that, and they're manipulating that to sell us an illusion. How does a hologram, this is what, when I came back from Brazil, I'm thinking, I want to look at holograms. They kept telling me the world's a hologram. I want to see what it means. A hologram, for people who haven't come across that, holographic images, three-dimensional holographic images. What they do is they fire a laser beam at a holographic photographic print. It goes basically directly onto the print. But part of the laser beam is deflected away and goes across whatever the object is that is being photographed. It could be a person, it could be an apple, it could be anything. And once it's passed across the beam, that half of the laser beam, they deflect it back so it hits the photographic print and collides with that part of the beam that's gone direct. Basically, not even basically, it is one of them set up in the way they do it. Basically, what's happening is the same as when you throw two pebbles in a pond. The waves go out, and at the point where they collide, they are creating an exact wave replica of the two stones, where they fell in the water, the speed they fell in, how far apart, everything is in there in a wave form. So that's basically what happens on a holographic print. The two halves of the laser come in, one containing the imprint of the subject. They hit each other, collide with each other. It's called an interference pattern. And when you look at a holographic print, that's basically what it looks like, something like that. And you're looking, what's that? It's just a series of wavy lines. But you then fire a laser onto that, and it becomes that. That's a hologram, a three-dimensional hologram. That becomes that. That's a hologram. It looks as if you could not put your hand through that, but you can. It's turning wave patterns into holographic images. These are all holograms. That's a hologram. So, let's go back one. I started reading about this stuff, and what they found is this. Television is possible because of something called Fourier transforms. It's some kind of mathematical sequence that was discovered by this guy Fourier. And so what these transforms allow is for a camera to take a picture of something that looks real, turn it into waveform, and broadcast it in waveform, and the television then decodes the waveform back into pictures. What they've discovered in experiments with the brain is that the brain works in exactly the same way on Fourier transforms. The brain is a frequency decoder. It is taking frequency waveforms and turning them into pictures. And I wonder if there is any out here, or whether it's all in here being projected as an illusion out here. These codes in the Matrix movie, the first Matrix movie, kind of symbolic of this. When those people are looking at the Matrix, what we're seeing is this, but they're seeing street scenes and cars and people, because they're decoding the Matrix codes into holographic illusions in the Matrix. This is not real. It's a hologram. And the fact that it's a hologram explains many things. Interestingly, one of the things that this voice in Brazil told me, which sounded bizarre at the time, is that these people manipulating the world, like the reptilians and what have you, they're actually not, this is the next level of kind of going on this, they're not actually consciousness in the sense that we perceive consciousness. They are, as in the Matrix, sentient programs. They're much more sophisticated than a computer program, but it's the same principle. And what this voice said to me is, why do you think they have no emotion and no empathy with the victims of their actions? Imagine this, it said. If you programmed a computer to kill a child, would the computer have any emotional consequences for doing it? No, it just does it because it's a program. And what it was saying is, if you think that this world is an illusion, then other illusions can be planted in there that we think and take to be real, but not even consciousness as we know it. They're just implanted, a bit like, I suppose, the woman in the red dress in the movie The Matrix. It looks real, but it's not real. Once you have an illusion, anything goes. Now, one of the amazing traits of a hologram is that every single part of the hologram contains a picture of the whole. If you take a holographic print, which if you fire the laser on it shows you the picture, if you take that print and you cut it into 4, you fire a laser onto any one of those 4 parts, it will give you a smaller version of the whole picture. Cut it into 8, smaller version of the whole picture again. So every part of a hologram contains the whole. Now a few mysteries start to unfold. Reflexology, acupuncture, and all these alternative healing methods are able to find the body, whole body, in every part of the body. So they find places on the foot that relate to the heart and the liver and the kidneys and all this stuff. In acupuncture, they find little points on the ear that relate to every part of the body. Every part of everything that is necessary to grow a whole body is contained in every cell of the body. Why? Because it's a friggin' hologram and contains therefore the whole in every constituent part. The more I understand about this, the more I learn about this. This seems to be the game. Experiments have shown that about 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind decides to take an action, move its arm, speak, 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind says, I'm going to do that, the electrical signals have begun in the brain to make it happen. So where's the real engine room of behavior here? Certainly not in the conscious mind. It's an experiencer. It's an observer. The real power of the mind is in the subconscious mind. And before I got into any of this, it was very clear that the Illuminati target the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, more than anything else. They are powering in there with subliminals, creating a certain reality, and from that subconscious mind, we are creating the waveform patterns that we then, at the conscious mind level, decode into holographic illusions. If you can program the reality and the beliefs of the subconscious mind, you create the reality that decodes into what it thinks is real. The subconscious mind is the target for that reason. So, that is a hologram we think is real, when really it's just wave patterns. And it's not just the wave patterns that we create. It's not that we all look at the same place and say, oh, I think that's a tower and I think that's a building. Yes, all right. It goes beyond that. The matrix is, at this level anyway, what I call consensus reality. And it works like this. Hello, that shocked you, eh? It's all right, I've not shape-shifted. At this point in the talk in Brixton, all the video equipment went pear-shaped. That was recording. So instead of splicing the two bits together and losing all the information in between, I thought I'd just add in here from my home the bits that are missing, and then we'll go back to the talk for the last period to the end. And what I was actually talking about when the tape Brixton ended was consensus reality. I was talking about this picture here, about how when information comes in through the eyes, it's actually waveform, not actually three-dimensional cars and rooms and walls. Our brains do that. And it's interesting that when information comes into the eye, it's upside down, it's backwards, and it's two-dimensional. How many people realize that? That when information comes in the eyes, it's two-dimensional. What happens is the brain then takes the two sources of information coming through the eyes. You know, like those video viewer things where you see those three-dimensional pictures when you look in. They work because each eye is given the same picture and it puts the two together to create a three-dimensional image. Well, that's what the brain's doing every time we look around. So, consensus reality is what I was mentioning in Brixton, that it's not just us, if you like, individual minds that are creating our reality, although we're giving our unique spin on it by the nature of our beliefs and what have you that create the reality that we think we experience. But there's a collective level, consensus reality I call it, which allows us to look at the world and basically agree on what we're seeing. For instance, if I looked out of that window, the cameraman here and everything, we would agree that there was a house over there. That's consensus reality. We might then, in our uniqueness, say, oh, I like that house, I don't like that house, I don't like the color, I do like that color. We would put our spin on it, but we would agree basically there's a house there. And this level of collective reality is what the psychiatrist Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. And this is where, in so many ways, the matrix lies, this matrix of illusion that we live in and think is real. There's a phenomenon that lots of people maybe know about now, which has been termed the 100th monkey syndrome. What they found was that once you showed a certain number, and it's only a few, of a species like monkeys, something new, suddenly, inexplicably, but it's not, all or many more of that species can suddenly do spontaneously, without being shown, what the few have had to be, if you like, taught to do. And the reason that phenomena is possible is that there is a level of each species, because we're all one anyway, the human race, the monkeys, whatever, where those minds are connected. And I can only kind of symbolize it, I suppose, as if your individual mind is a computer and the collective mind is like the internet, the World Wide Web. And when you symbolically learn something new, you might type it up and put it on the web. There it becomes available to anyone that wants to log into the web. The 100th monkey syndrome works like this, in the sense that once those monkeys or anyone has learned something new, that knowledge automatically gets transferred to the collective mind, the collective level of that species. And there, like the web and logging in, other members of that species can access that. And suddenly they can do something, they know something, without actually being shown. Like most so-called mysteries and inexplicable things, it's actually very simple what's happening. Because animals don't read the newspapers and watch the television, because they don't go through this ludicrous indoctrination system we call education, they are not desensitized. They are much more sensitive to these collective levels and these other levels of consciousness. So they access information very, very sensitively, very effectively in this way. But humans do it too. And so every time we learn something new, we are adding that into the collective mind. But in terms of collective reality, that collective mind is also influencing us in the other way, in the circle. And so once you have a human collective mind, human subconscious, collective subconscious, programmed with a reality, then unless as individuals we consciously disconnect from that reality, we are going to live that reality. So this is where this whole idea comes from, that we look outside and we all agree that there are certain things there. And this is a major level of the manipulation, because the Illuminati wish to program and indoctrinate the human collective unconscious mind with a manufactured reality which will then be real to the whole population. And that in so many ways is what the Matrix is. So if we look at this picture, again, what is happening is once the subconscious, this is the key level of the manipulation and indoctrination. Once the subconscious, whether it's the collective subconscious or the individual subconscious, takes on a reality, through those thought forms that sense of reality creates, the conscious mind then takes that information, observes those subconscious thought fields, and turns them, in the way I talked about earlier, into three-dimensional holographic illusions that we take to be real. And therefore, if you can program subconscious reality, you can create and manipulate what the human conscious mind believes is real. And that's what the Illuminati are doing all the time. Now, in terms of miracles, what are miracles? Where people do things that are inexplicable. In a book I've just put together called Tales from the Time Loop, I give a lot of examples of these miraculous feats, like people who in laboratory conditions have put swords all the way into their body and out the other side, pulled it out, no problem. We of course see people who walk through fire, and there are those again documented examples of people who've walked across molten volcanic lava that is only cold enough to hold their weight. No burning of the feet, nothing. What is happening here? It's a withdrawal from consensus reality, the reality that people accept to be real at the level of the subconscious human collective mind. Because if you accept as your reality that this foot or this leg is real, and you accept that fire is real and not an illusion of the mind, then your mind will create the reality of your belief, i.e., you walk through fire, you'll get bloody burned. But if you can disconnect your sense of reality from the consensus belief that fire burns and legs get burned, you can walk through fire and walk across molten lava and put swords in your body with no ill effect, because it's not your reality. It's just a miracle version of that story I told earlier in the talk at Brixton, where the hypnotist put the guy's daughter in front of him and told him when he came out of the hypnotic state he would not be able to see his daughter, so he didn't, and he could see things the other side of his daughter. Basically, it's like a movie, and you've just said that part's not in my movie. Well, if walking across molten lava and getting burned is not in your movie, then you can't get burned, because it's all illusion. There was a lady I came across some years ago who used to give over a room in her house for people that wanted to meditate for long, periods. And she was telling me that one day, one time, she had this guy who went in and meditated for a long period, and she got worried about him. And eventually, she took him a cup of tea, see what was going on. And she said, I opened the door. She said, I walked in, looked across. She said, and I dropped the cup, because she could see half of his body, the lower half, had disappeared. Only the top half existed. Below that, nothing. Why? Because he had gone so deep into a meditative state, a state of going into another reality, that his body was starting to follow his mind into that reality. This is what it's about. So there are no limitations. The only limitations are those that we put on ourselves. And as Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And what makes it persistent is this collective level, and the fact that we are constantly having our sense of reality reinforced externally. This is what's real, education, media, and all this stuff. And therefore we take it on and we create the three-dimensional holographic illusion of that reality. This is what the whole basis of the conspiracy about. It's hypnotizing, literally hypnotizing the population with a certain reality. So, what is reality? Quite simply, whatever we think it is. And the idea is to more and more push and pressure people into a smaller and smaller sense of reality, with the destruction and suppression of diversity. The Illuminati's worst nightmare, or visionaries, or those that offer another sense of reality, because that will then give people the opportunity to see that there are other possible realities, not just the one that they're constantly conditioned to have, and therefore they can see that this is not the only possibility. The Illuminati don't want that. And of course, in the classic scene in the first Matrix movie, where the little child bends the spoon and hands it to the Neo character and says, do not try to bend the spoon. That is impossible. Only try to realize the truth. What truth? There is no spoon. It is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself. Exactly. And all the time, symbolically, we are bending the spoon and all that stuff all the time in our head. There is no out here as a three-dimensional reality. It's all going on in here. This is just consciousness, waveforms of thought that we decode. Things like gravity. Another scene in the Matrix movie where the bricks are floating around the room. What is gravity? Gravity is a sense of reality. And if we believe it, and it's consensus reality, we will be limited by it. But if you disconnect from it, you can disconnect from that reality, you disconnect from the limitations and laws of that reality. And you step out of the prison. And it's kind of interesting that, if you remember in that first Matrix movie, when the Neo character went through that realization that death was an illusion, when he was shot in the corridor and died and then came back to life. When he came back to life, he kind of symbolically overcome the limitations of the reality that he'd had all his life in the Matrix. And what happened at that point? With that realization, he was no longer seeing people and walls and what have you. He was seeing vibrational codes, in effect, the green codes that the Matrix used to symbolize this. And it's getting beyond the point where you take this to be real. That takes us beyond the limitations of the Matrix, because the Matrix will not control us once we realize that this is an illusion and we're creating it, and therefore we can create any illusion we like. We can create a paradise illusion, or we can go on creating a prison illusion, but they're still illusions, creations of our mind, and we are in control of that if we take it back. That voice in the Amazon, when I was in that altered state with the ayahuasca, was pointing all this out in great detail. And there was a point during that night when I opened my eyes and I saw the moon coming up. And as I looked at the moon, this voice said, the moon, the moon. Poets wax lyrical about the moon. Illusion. It's just a holographic illusion, like everything else. And then another point in the night, it said to me, do you think that's Earth you're lying on now? Illusion. You're only lying on it because your reality is that the Earth is real and the ground is real and you are real, and therefore you create that that reality in your mind and you experience it. It's like it's very clear that what we're living here is as much a dream as anything we have in sleep. The difference is we take the sleep dream, it was just a dream. This dream we take to be real, and therefore the dream controls us, because illusions can't control you when you know they're illusions. They can only control you when you think the illusion is real. And it said to me, this voice also, when you go out into the sunshine and you feel the sun and all that stuff, where does that come from? Do you think the infinite has to go and sunbathe, or? No. Again, it's part of the Matrix. The sun is as much illusion, it's a program, as much as everything else. And this is an artist's kind of symbolic impression by a friend of mine, Neil Haig. It's from the front of a new book, Tales from the Time Loop. That what this voice was telling me is that this consensus reality in this five sense world is basically like a time loop. We called it a time loop, where the illusion of time. I mean, you go into subatomic quantum physics, and they'll show you that there is no time. Time is an illusion of this reality. And I mean, I think Einstein said words to the effect of, time is relative, and we know that. He was pointing out that if you're in the company of as he put it, a lovely lady, time goes past very quickly. But if your hand is in a saucepan of boiling water, time passes very slowly. It's still the same time, but our relative experience of it is very, very different, because time doesn't exist. And what it was saying, this voice in Brazil, is that the illusion of passing from past to future is part of controlling us, because oneness is no time, and I experience that. And people who have out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, they come back again and again and say, there was no time where I was. There was no past, there was no future. Exactly. It's an illusion of this reality. And so the future eventually just goes round to the past, and we go round and round and round from reality, 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 like caught in a trap, when it's an illusion of our minds, which consensus reality continues to manifest. And what this matrix is, and what this time loop is symbolized by that droplet of water there. It's disconnected from the whole. Not really disconnected, because you can't be disconnected from oneness, because you're always oneness, but we have the illusion of disconnection, and that illusion is what stops us manifesting the true infinite magnificence that we are, and gets us caught into this idea that we're little and ordinary, and caught in a world in which life is living us instead of we living life. That's the difference between being in the illusion and thinking it's real, life lives you, or realizing it's an illusion and you're creating it. Then you can live life. So the more and more that I've gone along this path, it's clear that it's not a case of learning anything, because we're oneness, we are infinity, we have access to all, we know all. It's not about learning anything, it's about unlearning. It's about freeing our minds from the programmed reality that holds us in the trap. And because, as I've talked a lot about, it's the subconscious level that is really the engine room of human behavior and human reaction and human reality. That's why, you find that, as I've mentioned, about 1.5 seconds before I decide to do that, conscious mind decides to do that, the electrical signals are started in my brain to do it. I mean, why is that? Because the subconscious level is really the governor of human behavior. And so the Illuminati target the subconscious all the time. When they're talking about bin Laden did it, bin Laden did it, bin Laden did it, weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction, war on terrorism, war on terrorism. These mantras, this constant repetition of the same thing, it's done for a simple reason: to program the subconscious mind to accept that reality. And the subliminals that you find in advertising and in political broadcasts and all this stuff are staggering in their number. And subliminal, it means below threshold. In other words, your subconscious mind sees all and absorbs all. My subconscious mind, as it looks around this room, observes this room, is taking it all in. My conscious mind is aware of a fraction of what is actually there to see in this room. And so subliminals are there to talk to the subconscious while the conscious mind is completely unaware of it. I mean, a simple example, years ago now, they used to put a flash frame of Coke bottles, bottle of Coke, in the movies just before the interval. Now, the flash was so small and so fast, the conscious mind didn't pick it up. The subconscious mind picks everything up, and it was putting the thought into the subconscious, Coke, Coke, Coke. And the sales of Coke went up as a result of that. They would put other little subliminals in, like, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, to do the same. And when you look at the advertisements that you see all around you in newspapers and television, the subliminals manipulating the subconscious are enormous. Here's an example. About 5% apparently of people pick this up. So have a look. There is a subliminal message which, when it's pointed out, is crystal clear in the picture you're seeing. And like I say, according to the research, about 5% of people see this, and the others don't. If you haven't seen it, look at the two plants on the left. Go down to the bottom half and you'll see that they make an S in the background. A lot of these subliminals are put in the background of advertisements because people tend to concentrate on the subject. But in the background it kind of passes us by. That's good because it goes into the subconscious mind. If you look, it's an S, and then you look at the same level between the two middle plants, you'll see an E, and then there's the X on the other side. And sexual subliminals are used a great deal. Here's an advertisement which I looked at, and it said, yeah, just an advertisement, yeah, it's a guy, yeah, so what's in there? See if you can see the subliminal in that, because although it's kind of quite overtly sexual, the advert in general, it's actually a lot more blatant than that when you see the subliminal. What you do, if you haven't seen it, most people don't, I understand, go along the top of the jeans at on the waist, just to the left of the center of the chest, and then follow up the shading. And it's very clearly a willy. Now, you'll see these, until I started researching this, I didn't realize how blatant it was. You'll see things like that in the most innocuous of advertisements, like for chocolate cake and soft drinks and all this stuff. And again, this is one that actually was very blatant. This is for chicken McNuggets at McDonald's. I mean, have you ever seen anything on a chicken that looked like that? And when it was pointed out, they said, oh no, we're a family company. Yeah, all right. Now the reason that there's so many sexual subliminals put in advertisements is this. This is the basis on which they do it. We are led to believe we live in a sexually open society. We don't. We live in a sexually suppressed society. And we're in denial of so many things. Not just sexual things, we're in denial of many things that we don't want to face. What they do is, with subliminals, is manipulate that. They use the sexual subliminals to attract you on a subconscious level to the advertisement, although the conscious mind has no idea why it's attracted. And the conscious mind, which is in denial of sexuality, in denial of many other emotions that we feel, it shuts out what it's looking at. And so they have the wonderful benefit and bonus of attracting people to the advertisement on a subconscious level, while the conscious mind is not seeing what is attracting them to it. So this is what they use it all the time. And our subconscious mind is being programmed with messages and instructions and hypnotic implants all day, every day. From what I've read about like print advertising in newspapers and magazines, particularly in newspapers, they're designed to be looked at for about 1 second. So what are they doing? Are they going to sell me anything in words in the advert in a second? Not the idea. The idea is to implant in that second the subliminal message, and it literally is a hypnotic key, which then is designed to be triggered when you're walking down the supermarket and you see that product, and then the trigger comes and you buy the product. That's how it's based, what it's based on. And this, of course, doesn't just happen when they're trying to sell you a chocolate cake or a bottle of gin. It happens in political advertising, in political statements, and in the media in general, in terms of manipulating our subconscious reality of 9/11, the war on terrorism, invading Iraq. It's going on all the time. You might remember a few years ago when Georgie Bush, Boy George, was going against Al Gore. An anti-Gore advertisement by the Bush camp was found to have this subliminal in it, where rats came up when they were making a very anti-statement about Al Gore. Unfortunately, it was very crassly done compared with how it normally is, and you only had to slow down the tape very slightly to see the rats. It's much more subtle most of the time, but this is just an example of how it's done. I remember even further back, there was a time when Francois Mitterrand, the president of France, was going for a re-election, and people saw a subliminal involving him in the opening titles of the national news on one of their channels. Again, it's all about subconscious implantation. Here's an example of that. There's a very good book called The Age of Manipulation. It's one of many good books written by a man called Wilson Bryan Key, who's pretty much one of the world's best researchers and most knowledgeable writers on subliminal manipulation of the subconscious. And he points this out in his book about Colonel Gaddafi. Years ago, when they were in America trying to demonize Gaddafi, they had his front page cover picture on Time magazine, Time Warner, Time Warner, massive Illuminati company. And in the face, they had planted subliminally sex on the forehead, attract into the picture, and then kill on the side of the face to plant a very negative subconscious thought about Gaddafi. And they do this with other people as well. And these, let me add, are the very people who have told us what happened on 9/11, who did it, why it was done, and what should happen as a result. Interestingly, during the Iraq War, they introduced this massive manipulative con of having reporters travel with the troops during the Iraqi war. And what did they call them? And this word came out of the Pentagon. They decided on it. They call them embedded reporters, or embeds. Guess what they call these subliminal messages and implants in advertisements like the ones I've been showing you? They call them in the trade embeds. How appropriate. And there's no way that the Pentagon came up with that term for the reporters by accident. What were those embedded reporters? They were subliminal embeds, because they were traveling with the troops, they were dependent on the troops, they got all their information from the troops basically, and yet they were standing there apparently reporting the war as a journalist, but they were in fact front people for the official version of what was happening in that war. And this is, I would strongly suggest, one of the reasons that life got very unpleasant and very dangerous for so many reporters trying to report the war that weren't embedded to make sure that there were fewer and fewer who would put their lives at risk in the wars of conquest that are still to come. So again, subliminals are used to manipulate us and give us a subconscious image of reality all the time. I mean, here's Tony Blair. This man, along with Bush, and more importantly, those that control them and dictate to them in terms of policy and action, he has just brought about a war well, it's not really a war, you need two sides in a war, brought about an invasion that cost the lives of 7,000, at least, independent count, 7,000 Iraqi civilians, many, if not most of them, children. Children who were, if not killed, even more were grotesquely maimed. And yet, when he comes to Iraq for the first time, what does he do? He goes to a school of children who are all arranged to treat him like some kind of conquering hero. He picks one of the children up out of the crowd, and there's the photo opportunity of the kiss on the cheek and all that stuff. It's all subliminal. And have you noticed that when people like Blair talk to the troops, now what do? Well, you're going to talk to troops. So you put the troops there. I mean, it's not, kind of rocket science, and you stand in front of him and you talk to them. But notice that doesn't happen now. They put always, when they're talking to troops, a group of them behind the Prime Minister or behind Bush, and therefore in the picture on the news you have the troops in the picture around Blair or whoever when they're speaking. And that is giving a subliminal message, which is very simple. It is the subliminal message that's describing the scene precisely. It is saying the troops are behind Blair. And one other thing on subliminals and all this stuff, incidentally, is George Bush. He does it as well, but I mean, he's not quite got it right there, Georgie. But when I was in America during the Iraq War, I was watching CNN and Fox News or Fix News, the Murdoch channel, and others. And of course the military, the Pentagon, had decided to call the invasion of Iraq and the slaughter of civilians Operation Iraqi Freedom in true Orwellian fashion. Of course, why do they choose the names for their battles and their wars? They do it to implant a message to the public that they want the public to accept is the reason for the war. So they call it Operation Iraqi Freedom. It's about freeing Iraqis. Now, if you're a journalist, like a proper one, you know that. So what you do is you might mention once that they're calling it Operation Iraqi Freedom, and then that's the end of it, because you know it's a manipulation. Instead, there was CNN and Fox News and all these people on the bottom of the screen through the war. It had Operation Iraqi Freedom. Now, what's happening there is as the conscious mind is watching the pictures of the war and the news coverage, or what passes for it, the bottom is telling the subconscious all the time they're watching Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Now, this is planting these subliminal messages that are affecting the sense of reality of the subconscious mind, which the conscious mind then turns into three-dimensional holographic representations of that reality. But if you look at that now, if you couldn't see it earlier, you will see it crystal clear. In fact, you probably can't see anything else but the word sex. This is very important because once the conscious mind is aware of the manipulation, it's aware of the subliminal, it sees it crystal clear and is no longer subject to that manipulation. So when these various subliminals are pointed out to the conscious mind, there's no way that the conscious mind will be deluded and not see them again. And also what the researchers found is that even if you can't see the subliminal, because when the thing's going on the telly and all that stuff, you can't be searching every one. But even when you can't see them, if you are consciously aware that they are there, that when you're watching the television there's subliminals, and when you're reading newspapers there's subliminals, the research has shown that the effect of the subliminal on the person's sense of reality is dramatically reduced. So it's very good to be aware that these subliminals are there all the time, because they affect us far less. So this is the whole basis of the whole Illuminati game of human control. It is manipulating and implanting humanity's imagination of itself, subconscious imagination of itself. And that then becomes our conscious reality, the matrix. So if we are going to bring an end to the matrix control, and we need to change our reality and our sense of reality, because then our manifestation of it must change, because one is a mirror of the other, which brings me to this. When you look at this process of the subconscious reality being observed into three-dimensional reality by the conscious mind, it very clearly reveals a simple fact about the human plight. We are combing the mirror, trying to change it. And if you stand in front of a mirror and you don't like your hair, I mean, mine's a bloody mess today, then you don't comb the mirror because you don't like your hair. You comb your hair and then the mirror reflects it. Common sense. But because of the way that we have been deluded in terms of the world around us, we constantly comb the frickin' mirror. So we think, and we are led to believe, that this world here is real when it's actually happening in our minds. So we don't like what's going on out here. We want to change it. We don't like what's happening in our lives personally. We don't like what's happening collectively in the world. We want to change it. So because we think this is real, where do we go to change it? We go out here. We want to change the world. We've got to do something out here. We've got to war with this person, some people might think, or we've got to have new legislation and change out here. What that does is comb the mirror. And as a result, nothing changes. Because you can comb the mirror all you like, your hair will never change. And the Illuminati are constantly trying to kid us that if we want to bring about change, it has to be out here that change takes place. This is a mirror, it is a reflection. This can only change when what is reflecting it, what is creating it, our inner sense of reality, collective and individual, changes. So if we want to change our lives, we have to change ourselves. If we change our sense of reality, then our holographic representation of that, our daily experience, will change, but only if we change that sense of reality. And we have got caught in this trap whereby we create our reality without knowing it. We experience the reality thinking we are not creating it. And if we don't like it, we try to change the reflection of the reality instead of what is actually creating it. So we're going round and round and round and getting absolutely below nowhere. And this is what the trap is. It's like running round in a cage on one of those kind of wheel things that mice run on. The way to break the circle is to realize this is an illusion. We're creating it. We can change it by taking control of our minds back. So everything in this world, or what we think is a world, is a reflection. It's a reflection of our inner sense of reality. And this knowledge is how the Illuminati control. We can talk about Bilderberg groups and secret societies and manipulating networks and banking scams, and we should. We need to be aware of those things. But the bottom line of all of it that makes it all possible is the Illuminati's manipulation of humanity's imagination of itself. Once they got control of that, they know that we will manifest through this process of creating these holographic illusions, we will manifest the world that suits them. So, combing the mirror, this is Neil Haig again with a symbolic example of the way we are going round and round in circles, trying to change a reflection instead of that which is being reflected. So this is why when we have certain fears, we tend to draw them to us. Of course we do, because when we have all these the fears about this or fears about that, that is our sense of reality on a conscious and particularly subconscious level. So what's that going to do? It's going to manifest the thought fields representing that fear, and then we are going to observe those thought fields into holographic reality. We are going to experience through this method and process the fear that we have. You know, how many people say, you know how I'm frightened of so and so? You know, you'll never guess. You've experienced it. Oh yeah, of course you have. So we are drawing to us all the things that are in our subconscious reality, including what we fear, manifestly what we fear, because it's so powerful. And the more that we take on these mind manipulating statements about, oh, is it an orange alert today for terrorists, and oh, there might be a dirty bomb, oh my goodness me, oh, what's happening with the economy, oh my goodness me, am I going to have a job next week, all this stuff. If we take it on, it's going to become our reality, because we create the illusion of what we think and what we are in our inner selves. But in the same way, if we put out a different sense of reality, if instead of being fearful about things, we let the fear go, because there is no fear, it's an illusion, it's a creation of our minds. If we put out love, if we put out lack of fear, if we put out oneness, the balance of all things, if we put out optimism, I know it's going to be fine, not I think, oh, I hope it's going to be all right, I know, we will create that reality. Money and all these things that, you know, people like in their lives and what have you, or whatever their desires are, whatever that form they may take, they are illusions. They're as much an illusion as not fulfilling that desire, not fulfilling that ambition. That's another illusion. So we are in control of whether we manifest the illusion of manifesting what we want, or whether we manifest an illusion of manifesting failing to get what we want. They're both illusions. We're in control of which one we have. And I think that's pretty much covers what was in the gap when the tapes went wrong at Brixton. And so let's go back there now. And we're going to pick up this very point, because when I was in that altered state in Brazil, this voice was telling me about the illusory nature of the emotions that we feel and the pain that we manifest. And once we realize they're illusions, we can maybe do something about them. Anyway, let's go back, pick that up at Brixton, and hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for watching. When I was in that oneness state in Brazil, this voice said to me, do you feel any pain here? Do you feel any worries here? Do you feel any emotional trauma here? No, no, no. No, because they're all illusions created by the mind and the manipulation of the mind. We live in bloody paradise. We've just freaking forgotten. So when you put out love, in its true sense, not I love you, darling, saw you down the disco, but a love that can say, hey, despite all that I've talked about today, you can say, hey, I love you, George Bush. I love you, Tony Blair. Hey, if I don't love you and I don't love all these other expressions of oneness, I can't love myself. How can I? Because I am you and you are me. This is not about shooting Tony Blair. This is not about stockpiling weapons for the big shootout. It's just another polarity that suits the matrix perfectly. We need to change reality, and then all the stuff we don't like will demanifest from our reality when we cease to create it. This is why you don't fight for peace, you peace for peace. If we want a peaceful world, let's be peaceful. I heard Tony Blair talking about Afghanistan or something. He says, sometimes you have to fight for peace. Prat. What I coming to an end now. I'm so bloody hungry. It must be. What kind of happens is this. It seems to me. Hey, hey, is that right? Is that a Birmingham accent out there? I love the Birmingham accent. They are, mate. Anyway, what kind of happens is we come into this reality, and when we hold a connection with oneness, we have everything we need to express that in this world, this level dimension of experience. We have eyes and ears information that gives us a fix on the world around us, and we have the connection with a multidimensional infinite self that gives us a level through which we can see and experience this world and judge its reality and our behavior and everything. However, that is the last thing the Matrix wants. Therefore, what happens is, because of this process that I've been talking about, particularly right at the start of creating the norms and suppressing differences, when we come into this dimension to experience this reality, once we kind of wake up and say, hey, I'm here then, what happens is we start to get programmed. Once you program one generation of parents, and that happened a long time ago, to accept the reality you want them to accept, with no malevolence most of the time anyway, with no malevolence at all, they will pass on that programming to their children as they grow up, and they'll start to program them with the same reality. And children soon learn that going with the consensus is actually a lot less hassle than challenging the consensus. And so they start to get, and they start to realize that it's much better to go with the general belief than to challenge it. So what happens is this fear starts to disconnect us, because fear generation is what we're supposed to be with this Illuminati. It starts to disconnect us from oneness, and we start to have the illusion of division. And we actually forget the hell who we are. And so once we're there, we are in the Matrix. The Matrix has us. And, you know, I was in the old city of Jerusalem in 1993, I think it was. And I was near that big mosque with in Temple Mount, and I'm watching these Muslim kids playing soccer, lovely little kids playing soccer, and they all seem to be called Mohammed. It's, if you have 11 Mohammeds at Arsenal, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Come here, Mohammed. Which Mohammed? What are you talking about? They're lovely kids, and I was watching them, and it occurred to me, because I haven't even been to the old city of Jerusalem. It's a very small area within this big wall. But even so, they've cut it into quarters, because we don't want to bloody live together, do we? I mean, crikey, they'll all want to do it. There's a Jewish quarter and a Christian quarter, an Armenian quarter and an Arab quarter. And I'm watching these kids play football, and it just occurred to me that by that age, about 5, 6, 7, 8, they already have a view of themselves, life, God, and Jewish people. If that consciousness had become incarnate, literally in the old city of Jerusalem's case, 5 minutes walk down the road in the Jewish quarter or the Christian quarter, they would at that very same age have a completely different view of themselves, God, life, and Arab people. And the only difference between the two is the programming that consciousness had gone through in the early formative lives of its earthly experience. And so this is how we're programmed into beliefs and division, and forgetting that we're all one consciousness. We are disconnected from oneness in our minds by the belief that we are just a disconnected individual with no power. Know thyself. When we know who we really are, we become completely different entities. We look at the world in a completely different way. Not small me, I can't do anything, I'm just Joe Public. It's, hey, I'm all that exists, I can do anything. Don't think you are, know you are. I've more and more understood the difference. It's like, oh, I think I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to do it. It is my reality. There can be no other outcome. It's my reality. It's my universe. I control my universe. It will happen. I know it. I know it. Not I think it. Completely different state of being. And don't, remember the Matrix? Stop trying to hit me and just hit me. Again, in this process, I'm trying to hit you. In the process of trying to hit you, that's what you're doing. You're trying to hit him. It's a completely different state just to hit, not in that, and in every other case. Don't try to do something, just do it. One of the things also that this voice said to me, very interestingly, is don't ask the question, know the answer. You are all that exists, therefore you know all things. The illusion is that you don't, and so you ask the question, and in asking the question you are accepting the illusion that you do not know the answer. So, if we can break out of these eggshells and start to be who we are and not fear what other people think of us, because it doesn't matter, because they're illusions and so are we can start to change reality, transformation into a completely different state, from disconnection to oneness and therefore infinite possibility. Martin Luther King said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." Love has got this reputation as being weak. Always into love, he'll be doing the washing up next. Love is the ultimate power because it is without that which takes our power away, fear. And love is not just love. Love is not just infinite love. It is infinite wisdom. It is infinite knowledge. It is infinite knowing, because infinite love is all things in balance as one. And so, we'll do what is necessary without fear once we get into that state of no fear, which is oneness and the understanding of the power we have. We are all infinite genius. We've just forgotten. That's the problem. One of the things, as I come to an end, that Martin Luther King said, cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asked the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one we must take because it is right. We are now at that point, at a fork in the road, where we do that or we walk slavishly to the global fascist state. And what's happening, and I've been a barometer of this in the last 13 years. I mean, Joachim, a man who spoke in Chicago to 8 people, you know what I mean? No one wanted to know. But there, people are waking up. Why? One reason is this, the 100th monkey syndrome. Every single person who wakes up and starts to question and starts to put a different reality and starts to see through the illusion, they are putting that knowledge into the collective unconscious. The 100th monkey syndrome. And it takes nothing like half the people to do it, to swing people into another state of possible reality. And what is happening is, as more and more people wake up, when people say, well, what can I do? I'm just Joe Public. Change your reality. You'll add that reality to the collective consciousness, and then other people that haven't been to an event like this or haven't read any books will start spontaneously accessing that knowledge and spontaneously seeing things they have not read books about but can just see. And with this is happening now. All over the world, the 100th monkey syndrome is starting to manifest as more and more people wake up exponentially, more and more with every passing week, as they start to see through the illusion. There is an awakening going on, which is going to change this world from a prison to a paradise, and it's going to happen in our lifetimes. Because we are connected, we can put this knowledge into the collective and make it access to everybody without having to do anything other than transform ourselves. And the cards, the house of cards, are coming down. They're coming down in our lifetime, and what we see now, and it's horrendous as this thing seems to be motoring, it's in its death throes, desperate to hold on to the power over the human mind that it's had. Its days are over. We are going to transform this world from what it has been for so long, a prison of the mind, to a paradise by taking our minds back and manifesting a different illusion. That's all it is. And all I can finish off and saying, there was a great comedian years ago, he died in 1994, very, very sad, called Bill Hicks. Great guy. And he said that very profound man, Bill Hicks, who could see a lot of this and went for it through with humor, which can be very powerful. And he used to say about, because he took the substances and went into way out there into other dimensions, which gave him a lot of insight. And he said about the nature of reality in this world, matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is just a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. That is the key. What this whole manipulation is about is the manipulation of humanity's imagination of itself. Ordinary, no power will create it. That's what they want us to believe. We can take our imagination back and know that we can manifest a reality to express who we really are. Infinite power, infinite love, infinite knowledge, infinite understanding, infinite knowing. That's our destiny, and all we have to do is remember it. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. Hope you got something out of it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.